Hi guys. So a couple of days ago, Stats New Zealand released the labour market statistics for the March 2025 quarter. Now this data is used by the government and the RBNZ to make decisions about monetary and fiscal policies. Now if you was not aware, monetary and fiscal policies are two major tools used by the governments to influence economic activity. Monetary policy, managed by the RBNZ, focuses on controlling the money supply and interest rates to stabilise prices and promote economic growth. Fiscal policy, on the other hand, is the government's use of taxation and spending to affect the economy, often used to stimulate demand or manage budget deficits. So obviously, the data we get from Stats New Zealand is super important and the data must be accurate. So here is just a section of the latest data, and if you want to see it for yourself, I'll put a link in the description. Now if you look here, you can see that the data is seasonally adjusted and HLFS. Now I will talk about HLFS a little later. So you can see that the unemployment rate is 5.1% again. Now this number is very important as it is unchanged from last quarter, which some media outlets are saying is very positive, and they are suggesting that we may even be at peak unemployment. So from the December 2024 quarterly, there was 156,000 people unemployed. And this quarterly, there are also 156,000 people unemployed. Now this quarterly also says that there was a quarterly change of 0.3% in unemployment. So in this video, I won't talk about the underutilization rate, which has jumped substantially, which means that more people are not working as much as they used to. And I will also not address how the employment rate went down, but the number of employed went up, as this is possible if you have a large increase in the population due to international migration. You can still have more people in jobs, but you have had so many new people coming in that the percentage of people employed, the employment rate over the new much larger population goes down. So what I would really like to look at is how Stats New Zealand gets this data. Let's look at unemployment. Now, speaking from a purely ignorant viewpoint, I would have thought that it would be worth contacting WINS to get a rough estimate of the number of unemployed people, wouldn't you? And if I wanted to measure how many people are employed, I would ask the IRD to give me a breakdown from quarterly GST returns. You could just put a section in the quarterly return stating how many employees you have. Using this method, you could also find out how many people are underemployed, just by finding out how many hours were worked by each employee. This data would be really easy to obtain, and the data would cover most of the population. Obviously, the more cunning cashy worker would not be captured by this data, but that data is not captured in the way the Stats New Zealand currently get their data anyhow, so they obviously naively don't think it's a big thing. So now let's see how Stats New Zealand get their data. You know, the data that is very important for creating that positive sentiment that the government and RBNZ loves to try and manipulate us with. The same data the Stats New Zealand releases and is used by all media sources in New Zealand to give us all information on how the country is tracking. So my question is, does the data that we are being fed stand up to reality? It's much like the CPI, the Consumer Price Index data, that Stats New Zealand also feeds us. Now, does anyone really believe that the CPI is an accurate measure of inflation? If you do, then take a look at this, and I swear this is not parody. I have put the link in the description. Now, bear in mind that existing house prices are not part of the CPI basket. Like, the thing that costs people the most and is destroying the country is not included in the inflation data. So when existing house prices go up 60% during COVID, the CPI did not capture it. It does capture the prices to build a new house, but does not include the land. So ask yourself, why is this excluded from the CPI basket? Who benefits? So let's look at what the boffins of Stats New Zealand decided to change in their CPI review for 2024. And listen, I have to repeat, this is not a joke, this is not parody. I've actually included a link to this Stats New Zealand document in the description. So here we go. They've added 11 items, they've removed 21 items, they've changed specifications for 3 items, and they've consolidated 55 items into 13 items. It says there are now 598 items in the CPI basket, which is down from 649 after additions, removals and changes to product specifications. Table 1 lists the items added to the basket. There's Table 1. So what's being added? Spinach, which is fresh spinach. Meal kits delivered. Cocktails on license. Headwear. Sofas and couches. Bed bases and frames. Pillows. Cruisers. Smartwatches and wearable devices. Streaming services and hairstyling products. And I don't see any house prices added, unfortunately. But I suppose them things there are just as relevant. So Table 2, items removed from the CPI basket in 2024. Celery. Liqueurs, off license. Ready to drink pre-mixed spirits, on license. Men's jerseys, men's ties. Alarm monitoring services, lounge suites, bedroom suites, duvet inners, electric fan heaters, chainsaw hire, urban ferry fares. Home telephone line rentals and associated services. Home telephone national call services. Pre-recorded DVD discs. Food magazines. Open polytechnic fees. Hair colour supermarkets. Hair colour other stores. Indemnity insurance on buildings and indemnity insurance on house contents. Okay. They've all been removed. Now, Table 3 summarises item specification changes. So, soy milk, shelf stable. It's been expanded to include all plant-based milks. Women's tracksuit trousers. It's been expanded to include women's yoga pants and activewear. Piano lessons. It's been expanded to include all music lessons. Wow. Anyway, Table 4. This summarises the items that are being consolidated into broader categories. The consolidation allows more frequent model and weight updates, rather than being restricted to updates only when the entire CPI is reviewed. Chocolate blocks. So they've consolidated a block of chocolate in a convenience store and a block of chocolate in a supermarket into one item. Energy drinks. They've consolidated energy drink carbonated a can and energy drink carbonated a bottle into one item. Domestic air transport. A single item now represents all the domestic air travel routes, consolidating 7 items into one. International air transport items now represent a region instead of a single route, consolidating 19 sub-items into 6. Oh, okay. Stamps and postage page packaging consolidated from 10 items into 3 items. Motorboats, trailers and outboard motors consolidated into motorboats, including trailer and outboard motor, and golf club membership. Oh, very important. Consolidating golf club membership men's and golf club membership women's into one item. Wow, that's so important. So as you can see, guys, the boffins have been very busy working on all the important stuff, not including the $200,000 or $300,000 increase in house prices. That's not important. But what you've got to do is focus on them piano lessons. Okay? All good, guys. Country's under control. So let's get back on track into the real world. The CPI is obviously a joke. And so it is starting to seem is the Stats New Zealand labour market statistic. And why do I say this? Well, remember at the start I said I will talk about the HLFS later on. Now this is how Stats New Zealand gets its data regarding the labour market. It doesn't get the data from WINS or the IRD. Instead, they get the data from the HLFS or Household Labour Force Survey that they do. This document here outlines how they actually get this data. I'll put a link to it in the description. It's a 73-page document, but all you really need to look at is this paragraph to not have to read anymore. Here we go. About the HLFS. The HLFS was introduced in October 1985. It is a continuous nationwide survey of households which measures quarterly averages of employment, unemployment, and non-participation in the labour force, as well as quarterly and annual changes in these levels. The survey helps monitor labour market, inform social policy, support research, and provide insights into employment quality and the health and general well-being of New Zealand's economy. Each quarter, we aim to collect responses from 15,000 households, guys, representing 30,000 individuals aged 15 years and over. As a rotating panel survey, the HLFS interviews the same respondents for a set number of consecutive quarters before replacing them with new ones. Households are selected using a multi-stage, stratified clustered design, and all adults in a selected households are interviewed. What a load of waffle that was at the end there. So okay, they aim to get all of their data from 30,000 individuals. So all of this data that the government and the RBNZ are using to make very important decisions and policies, and that the media is feeding to the masses so we can decide if we can start spending again or not, is collected from 30,000 people. 30,000 people who are handpicked by some other people. Now later in the document they go on about how they decide to choose these households, but it is all just waffle. That actually means nothing. For all we really know, they could be handpicking people to suit their rhetoric. They openly admit to changing the sample designs and sample sizes over the years. We know from the CPI basket that very often the most important data is intentionally left out. So why should we believe that the same thing is not happening here? And to take a sample size of 30,000 people out of a population of 5.35 million people is a joke. Especially when they could be getting real data from almost all of that 5.35 million people via the IRD and WINS. 30,000 people divided by 5.35 million people is 0.56%. Are we really supposed to believe that 0.56% of the population who are handpicked by some people at Stats New Zealand is a good indicator for how many people in New Zealand are losing or are not losing their jobs? Okay, so it can give a slight indication, and I mean slight indication, like a poll can at election time. But how accurate are they? I am sorry, but I do not trust this data, do you? Maybe I am completely missing the mark, and what they are telling us is completely legitimate. But if you, like me, do not believe what you're being told, and these unemployment figures seem dubious, and maybe you even have stories of job losses in your area that are not being reported, then please include them in the comments. It would be such a good thing for others to get a more realistic understanding about what is actually going on out there, guys. So that's it. That's the end of the video. And if you like the content, please give me a like and subscribe. And I tell you what, I'll see you all on the next one. Cheers, guys.